All right, hello. We are going to be making a sketchbook. So you can see here that I have a finished sketchbook. It's about a 7.5-inch square book. It has a colored cover. It has a contrasting and decorative like spine sheet. And inside it has pages. We will be doing much of our practice work in this sketchbook along with some journaling and some just sketchbook assignments. And so we're going to create this today. You'll also see that the sketchbook itself has a little pocket. So I'm going to teach you how to make this sketchbook. So in order to make the sketchbook, there are some supplies you're going to need to gather. Some of them are at your table already in a bin. Some of them you're going to have to come and get. So here is a list of the things that you're going to need. You will need tape. You will need scissors. You're going to need a piece of string. You will need, and these things you will find in the little can at your table. You're going to need a binder clip. You're going to need a push pin. Put that there. And you're going to need a needle, okay? So those are some of the little things you're going to need. I'm going to just put some of this little stuff in this little can. In addition to that, you will need a chunk of pages, and those look like this. I will pass those out. You're going to need a cover color. So you can see I have this green sheet of construction paper. And then you're going to need some sort of contrasting or collage sheet for this outside kind of spine covering. And I'll show you why we do that in a couple of minutes. And you can see it can be like a piece of paper and you can cut it to a shape, or it can be, this is just a page out of a book. So step one is you're going to take your sheets of, once you've kind of gathered your supplies, you are going to use your pages, your sketchbook pages, to measure a couple of things. So one thing you need to measure is the piece of string that you need, and you need 2 times as tall as your sketchbook page. So you can see I've given myself a little extra on each side, but it's 2 times the height of my sketchbook. I'm just gonna take my scissor and I'm gonna cut that off. I can then pass the string and probably even the scissors to the next person at my table. I can, if I want, take a minute right this second while my thread cut is fresh and go ahead and thread the needle. This can be either really, really easy, or it's gonna take you a minute. So got a little bit to come through. And I'm not going to double this. I just want single thread, and I don't want a knot. So you can see I've pulled it through so that I have about 4 fingers overlap. And I'm just actually gonna set that aside with my clip and my push pin right now, because we're not gonna need that for a little bit. I'm also not gonna need this decorative piece until the end. So I'm going to just focus on my pages and my cover. And here is what I'm going to want to do. So first is cover. I want to take my cover and I'm going to fold the sheet of paper in half. Once my sheet of paper is folded in half, what I'm gonna do is set my inside sheets on top. So here's my fold, here's the fold of my sheets, and I'm going to kind of scoot my pages so that I have kind of an even border. And although at the top edge, and then you can see I have this long section. This long section is going to become my pocket. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just sort of hold these in here, and I'm going to fold this up. I'm gonna have to do something, I'm gonna have to fold it a different way in a minute, but at least this gives me like the fold that I'm gonna need. So this will become my pocket. Right now I'm just planning. So I'm just gonna double check that now my book has an even little space all the way around. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold my pages here and I'm just gonna crease this up. So I'm folding this little section. This becomes the spine of our book. So I'm on the fold of my colored paper. This is the fold. This is where it opens. All right. So I used my pages to kind of plan my cover. All right. Now, after I've got some of these folds, we're going to unfold. And I'm going to sort of refold a couple of these. So refold number one is I'm going to refold my pocket up this other way. I need to then refold this center to the middle and my little spine plan here. One side goes this way, one side goes the opposite way, and then I'm going to fold this. So what I did was make this piece come up. So you can see I have a front cover, a back cover, and I have like this W. So I've made kind of a W. So I have this like upside down little V or mountain in the middle, right? Before I do anything else, I would just want to double check that this is going to work. So I'm putting my sheets in here, and indeed I have just a nice even space all the way around. So that's going to be perfect. Next thing I need to do is just take some tape. And what I'm going to do is tape here and here to make the spine of my sketchbook be supported. So I'm just taking a piece of tape. I'm going to put it right over the top of that pocket space. And I'm putting it right along the fold. Just one single piece of tape. That's not quite as long as my book. Put that on there. I'm going to just kind of refresh. That tape is going to make the folds kind of flatten out. So I'm just going to refresh my folds. So now I have my front cover, my back cover, and I've taped where I'm going to be putting my book. Next step is I'm going to take my pages, I'm going to divide them into two groups. One group, two groups. So you should have 8 sheets of paper. So I'm just going to count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is going to become the front section. And then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 for the back section. So I have 4 in the front and 4 in the back of my sketchbook. 4 in the front, 4 in the back. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm lining all of these up. So this is going to get stitched together all at once. So I have my 4 in the front, my 4 in the back, and this little ridge in the center. And so what I'm going to do is pinch these together. You can see I'm pinching them together, and I open this up so that it's flat. And now I'm going to hold this with one hand and clip it with the other hand. I find that this is easiest to do if I put the clip where my sewing hand will be. So I'm right-handed, so I'm putting the clip where my right hand will go. And I'm going to be able to keep holding with my left hand, and I need to sew with my right hand. If you are left-handed, you're going to clip the opposite way around. And now what I'm going to do, so I've got my folds lined up. I'm going to take the push pin and I'm going to poke 3 holes. One in the center, and this goes all the way through. So one in the middle, and now I'm going to go halfway between the middle and the end. So I'm aiming for in between that middle space and the bottom. And now I'm going to go between the middle space and the top. So I'm pushing that push pin all the way through all of the sheets. And that's easiest to do when it's a little off the paper or off the table. Again, double check that I've got that pushed all the way through. And now I need my thread, right? So I threaded my needle before, and now I am ready to sew. So if I make us a little diagram just to talk about the direction that we're going to sew, this is my sketchbook here, and this is the fold and the clip. And I have my holes, 1, 2, 3. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to sew out the middle hole. I'm going to go in the top hole. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom hole. And then I'm going to go back through the middle hole, and then I'm going to have 2 threads here, and I'm going to be able to tie a knot. All right. So keeping this kind of diagram in mind, we're going to go ahead and sew. So this clip holds my papers, my hand holds my papers. I'm going to take my needle and thread. I'm going to go out that center hole. I'm going to pull my thread just so that it's a couple of inches long. It doesn't matter which hole I go through now, but I'm going to go from this outside back in this next hole. So you can see my needle is here. I'm going to push that up against the table. And I'm going to pull, I want to pull this until my thread in the middle moves. You can see I'm pulling it till my thread moves. Now I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go all the way down and out this last hole. Again, I'm going to pull. I want this to be fairly tight. We'll tighten it up at the very end. And now my needle is out here, and you can see I have this last stitch to go, and I'm just going to go down that middle hole one last time. Try not to stitch through the thread. And now I can see here that my needle is coming up on the same side as my string. So if I slide the stitch out of the way, I'm just going to tuck my needle under. Because what I want to have happen here is I want a thread to be on each side of that stitch. So look, I have 1 thread on the right hand side, 1 thread on the left hand side. I'm going to carefully give this a tug parallel to the stitch itself. And now I'm going to be able to put my needle back in the can because I'm done with it. And I'm going to knot over the stitch. So I'm going to just tie 2 or 3, just like at the beginning of tying your shoes, so that this stitch gets knotted down. Now I can cut the extra string off. This can go in the trash can. I can return my clip to the can. And my book here should now be stitched together. So I can fold this back cover up. I can fold this front cover up. I'm just gonna run my thumb along the fold so that it gets nice and creased. And I now have stitched together a little book. Very, very fun. The final step is for me to glue together the end so that my pocket stays in place so that I can actually put something in the pocket and it will not fall out. So I'm going to take a glue stick or a bottle of glue, and just right here along this edge, I'm going to run glue, and then I'm going to press so that this pocket gets glued shut. I'm going to do that at the front and the back. We will do some little activities throughout the trimester where you have little collage treasures and things that you need to put in this little pocket. And so it will be useful for us. So just glued, and you can see that I'm just gluing on a little line right here. I want to be able to open the pocket, so I don't want to do too much gluing because that makes my pocket too small. Just want to get that glued shut. My final step is to add this spine piece on, and what that does is just protects the stitch on the outside of the book so that this outside becomes stronger and doesn't get like too worn out. So I am just going to take this. I can fold it in half, or sometimes I like to fold it so that it's a little bit longer at the front and shorter at the back. So here's what that looks like from the top. And what this can allow me to do is I can take a scissors and I can use this as a way to begin decorating my sketchbook. So for instance, I could go ahead and just cut this in a little bit of a wave pattern. And I can glue that on, or maybe I decide, you know what, I want one more stripe off of here. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these in just a second. So this is my spine paper. I'm going to take it, it's folded, I have it cut, it's ready to go. You can use liquid glue for this. You can use glue stick for this. If you're using glue stick, you can see that I'm using a lot of glue stick. Liquid glue, you would use a paintbrush or your finger to kind of smear it all over. Oh, sticky. I am going to line this back up on this outside edge of my book. And I'm really going to make sure that I burnish this down with my hands, right? To make sure that this gets nice and stuck out here on the spine. So I'm running my finger along this edge so that that gets stuck to the crease, that this part gets nice and stuck. These little stripes that I have cut, I'm actually going to stick on my sketchbook, and you can see what happens here is this starts to begin some little bit of decoration. That can be what you now do. There are all sorts of collage and interesting papers in the room that you can use to personalize your sketchbook so that it is uniquely yours and recognizable. So you can go ahead and have some fun creating what the front of your sketchbook looks now that you have stitched it together.